we have the same tandem returning this season as the previous two. Of course, Mike Smith had a good year last year as a starter, but the Oilers do need Mikko Koskinen to return to the form he showed 2 years ago. Last season was a step back for him. And to me, it's pretty critical because Smith obviously can't play, 60 games or more.
No, we can't. They have to get back to where one goalie plays two, takes time off, the other goalie plays two. It's sort of a two-game rotation. And that worked very well in 2019-20 when Koskinen had a .917 save percentage. And then last year he was .899. For a number of reasons. The first, having to play every game for a month to start the season when Smith had a leg injury. And then Smith started playing all the games, and then Koskinen barely got into the game. So he couldn't get into any sort of rhythm whatsoever. Had several games where he was not very good, and, the worst being the game against Vancouver where he gave up 4 goals in the first 4 shots of the hockey game when he broke his stick over the crossbar. So in a rare show of on-ice emotion from Mikko Koskinen. So, right, if he can get back to where he was 2 years ago and they're splitting the goaltending and they're both feeding off one another, they'll be fine. The question is whether Mike Smith, who had finished 7th in the Vezina Trophy last year, and had so many good games where you said, man, he's the best goalie in the league outside of Vasilevsky, whether he can do it again at 39. The older you get, you're more susceptible to getting hurt and being out for a month. Now, I think it's been proven over the last several years that Mikko Koskinen cannot play a string of games in a row. I mean, when they traded Cam Talbot there a couple of years ago, Koskinen had to play almost every game for the last 6 weeks, and his game dropped off, dramatically. And then the first month of the season last year, where he had to play too many games with Smith hurt again, he wasn't very good. So if you keep them both healthy and they can both play every second game or 2 games on, 2 games off, I think they'll be fine. And in today's NHL, other than Vasilevsky and Hellebuck and a few other goaltenders who play most games, most teams have 2 goalies, and they live with it just fine in the regular season, and then you decide which goalie is your goalie in the playoffs.
Because I know the Oilers have Stuart Skinner on the farm in Bakersfield, and of course he was, here in camp up until not too long ago as the 3rd goalie. But, the Oilers, like we've been saying, they're in win now mode. They don't have time to be breaking in a new backup goalie, and even whether or not he would be an upgrade on Koskinen, because, as we found out over the offseason, there's not a big market when it comes to, let's say, trying to trade a Mikko Koskinen, nor was there that much to try to reel in terms of free agency. So Stuart Skinner isn't coming up unless for some reason there's an emergency.
He's the present day Laurent Brossoit, who has proven what he can in the minors, and then when he got to the NHL, they're looking for him to be a backup, I think, till he proves he's a starter. So, but he was very good in the preseason. So I think if he got called up in an injury situation and they had to play him, I think he'd be better than he was last year when he got the 1 game against Ottawa and won the game 8-5, but looked a little nervous, as he should, for playing his first NHL game. If the Oiler goaltending is not as good as they thought it would be, at the trading deadline, they'll be looking for a goalie. They'll be trading Mikko Koskinen because he'll only have, instead of $4.5 million in that contract, you'll have $1 million left on the contract. And you can trade for somebody else's goalie and give up a draft pick as well, maybe a prospect, and send Koskinen to that team and get a younger, better goaltender to play with Mike Smith, at least until the end of the year. And, the alternative, the options obviously are John Gibson in Anaheim if Anaheim continues to play very poorly. But he's got lots of time left in his contract, and he makes a lot of money. And Fleury, Marc-Andre Fleury, who plays in Chicago. If Chicago's out of the playoffs, then for whatever reason, and Fleury's on a 1-year contract, it runs out at the end of the year, maybe the Oilers take a run at him. So he'd cost a lot less than John Gibson, I'm sure. But, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure for a fact the Oilers' first-round draft choice would be in play for a goaltender at the trading deadline. Where they're going to finish in the standings, I think they've got a lot of prospects. If they had to give up a first-round draft choice to get another goalie, they would do so. But we're jumping the gun a lot. They haven't even played, we're not even a month into the season, and we're already talking about the Oilers maybe trading for a goaltender in March. So I think we're jumping
not even into the season.
No, I know we're jumping the gun somewhat here, and I think Koskinen has come in very determined this season to prove that last year was an aberration, and I'm sure while he spent the summer in Finland, I'm sure he knows that the Oilers did try to trade for Darcy Kemper, who was in Arizona, and he wound up in Colorado. So, I mean, I think he's a smart enough goalie to realize at his age that he's got to play better, and this is, his opportunity to show the Oilers that he's the 2019-2020 Koskinen, not the 2020-2021 goalie who was hardly played the last 2.5 months.
If we do end up seeing last season's Koskinen even a month into the season, so a month from now, people will be talking about it. So
because you can't play Smith
because
every
the stakes
game.
are higher.
Stakes are higher.
Yep,
they can't play.
The stakes are higher.
Yeah. Although that said, there's no way the Oilers are any worse than the second best team in the Pacific Division. Goaltending, they say that's the Oilers' weakness going into the season, and with the age of the goaltender and such, it probably is. That said, most teams in the National Hockey League have one weakness. They might be great in goal and really good on defense, but they can't score enough, or they score plenty, but they can't stop it. Can't stop anything. So I think you're right. I think if a month into the season they might be looking, but it's Vegas and Edmonton. Whatever team's going to finish first in the Pacific Division, because the division's not that strong. The California teams are not very good right now, and Seattle's an expansion team, and Calgary and Vancouver. On paper, one of them might finish third, but you have no idea what team would finish third. So I think it behooves the Oilers, if they can, to finish first in the division. Especially if there's only 3 teams making the playoffs in the division, the Pacific Division, and maybe they get more points than anybody else in the conference, and then they're playing the 5th place team in the other conference in the first round of the playoffs. So I think it'd be a feather in the cap if the Oilers won the division. Let's put it that way. It's been a long while since they won a division in the National Hockey League.